G'day. Today we're doing a bit of work on a Ford Ranger 2012 model, 3.2 turbo diesel. Got the 6R80 6-speed transmission in it. And what's happening, apparently after driving at about 5 to 10 kilometres, depending on how cold the morning is, it just stops driving until you turn the vehicle off, let it sit for a little bit, and then away you'll go for another 5 to 10 Ks. So 3.2, very hard bump, and manually shifting 1.2, it's got a really hard thump going through the gears as well. Everything else seems really soft, so when we get the pan off we'll be able to see what's going on. And I've just tried to take off then. It's still in sports shift. It won't actually take off manually. So that's another little hint of what might be causing some problems. Just whack the scan tool on there and see if we get any fault codes. But we've got the little wheel here and engine showing up on the dash. There's a little OBD plug there. One code found. And we've got a P0741 torque converter clutch. No, hasn't got it on there. So I can't find the Ford scan for it, so I'm going over to Asia and we'll just go try Mazda BT50. Can't find the 3.2 litre. There we go, 3.2 litre, look at that. Yes. Auto scan. Let that run through. And there we go, we've got quite a bit of stuff there. And we've got quite a few little codes there. Mainly the torque converter clutch. Catching up. And a few other little codes there. Cylinder 1 glow plugs. So 3 glow plugs as well, playing up. So we'll just take the pan off this one and have a look what's inside. Pan's off. And you can actually see all the fine metal there attracted to the range sensor. And I'd suspect that all these solenoids are thoroughly contaminated. Now, if you do regular servicing on these, you can keep an eye on the amount of muck that's in the transmission. But in this situation, there's something that's gone amiss in it and creating too much metal to warrant just cleaning, flushing or replacing the solenoids. that repair will be short-lived until all that metal floats around and contaminates the new solenoid. You can see the magnet's completely covered there, and there's actually quite a bit of muck there where the filter pickup is as well. If I don't wash it out, it's all washing down. The oil condition's pretty bad as well, so I'd recommend doing a rebuild on this one, given the mileage as well, but in the end it's always the customer's decision. We're just taking out the transfer case first. Here we go, we're going down. Is that plug not getting stuck up there? Oh. Yep, all clear. And there's one, 6R80. Okay, we've got the transmission all nicely washed on the outside, and got the pan off, drained a bit of the oil out. Now we're going to take the valve body out. Now the first stage, you've got this little plug here, that's just a little sleeve. What you need to do is press this tang and just pull it out like that. Press that little clip there, pull it up, and then that'll allow this sleeve to just wiggle out. There's a little fork in there, a bit hard to see from here, but when I get it out, you just got to wiggle it out. There we go. Been in there for a while, so it might take a bit. And that's the sleeve there. That just connect the sleeve, which connects the external plug to the mechatronic unit on the inside of the transmission on the valve body. Probably a good idea to just take that little dipstick off. Just got to undo that nut there and just take the whole thing out. Now all these bolts on the valve body, you can either use a T30. You can see it's a little bit sloppy, but you can get them off with a T30. Or you can use a Torx Plus T27, and that's a lot firmer in there, so you don't risk damaging either your Torx Plus bit or the little internal Torx shape in there. One thing I forgot to mention, I like to loosen these by hand instead of just whizzing them straight off with your impact gun or a air tool or whatever. And also these bolts, you just take the bigger ones out, leave the other ones because they're holding the valve body together. That's all, I need to loosen that one. Oh. And also these ones along here, you've got to take them off. All the other ones are a smaller Torx, so we won't touch them for the moment. They're all off or loose. You can see the position of them. They're not everywhere, they're just holding the valve body down to the case. And you can see that the valve body's loose. I haven't loosened these. Probably be a good idea to just loosen them while everything was bolted down, just a bit easier to loosen. Now you just carefully lift the whole valve body out. There we go. Now that we've got the valve body off, you can actually see it's called a bridge seal. Sometimes those seals flatten out and you lose pressure there, so that can cause application of the clutches an issue with them. Over here we've also got these little tubes. When they're new, these tubes stick out a lot higher up than that, and when you bolt it down, the idea is to have a good pliable tension sealing there. The other one must be stuck on the valve body there. over here. There it is. You can see it was just stuck on there. But that one goes over here. And they're all different lengths. You can see that would have still had tension on it. So they're not too bad, but I have seen them when they're flush with the case. If that's the case, then you're definitely losing pressure between the valve body and those little sleeves. Now over here, where the bridge seal is, you'll find that there's this little drop-in valve. You see that? That's actually the thermal bypass valve. You've got your cooling lines that are going out to your heat exchanger, and there's a little valve here that actually is temperature operated. What happens when the transmission is cold, the oil will just circulate in the transmission, won't come out of these, until it gets to about 70 degrees Celsius. That thermal valve will open and allow the oil to circulate through there. So a little mod you can do, there is a kit and they have a little valve where you can have constant cooling going through your heat exchanger. In Australia we don't have very cold climates, so you want to have as much cooling as you can. We don't need to warm up the transmission in minus temperatures or snow situations. Good idea to get rid of that so you have constant flow going through the cooling system. Before you disassemble the transmission, it's a good idea to get a reference point on the end float. You can take that between the stator shaft and the input shaft. I've already measured it. It's about 15 thousandths of an inch movement there. So if we can find anything worn inside, when we replace that, that'll take it up. Take out all these seals, and now we can whiz that pump out. All the pump bolts are 10mm. And you'll notice that they have like a little seal there. Now to get the pump out, a couple of ways you can do it. Some workshops put a little thread in here, in two opposite sides of the pump, and just pull it out with a slide hammer. There is also a puller that you can hook under there on the stator shaft splines, or below the stator splines, and it just pulls it out leaning up against the input shaft, and that'll just pull it out. There is an O-ring there. It is pretty tight, especially if it hasn't been off for a while. There we go. Pumps out. And they are fairly heavy, these components, so be careful you don't damage them getting them out. Now you can already see, I don't know if you can see that, but that bush there on the input shaft is thoroughly flogged out. I'll pull up this smaller clutch pack. They still look to be okay. Now quite often on these, this front planetary will blow up, so you want to make sure you check those little thrust washers on the ends. Make sure everything's as it should be. And those clutches, you can see the outer ones, the ones that are sitting on the outside of the clutch pack, still look good. The ones in the middle are worn out, if you can see that. But they haven't burnt out. Okay, we've checked the forward clutch, the overdrive clutch and the front planetary, and now we're going to take out the direct clutch and the intermediate low and reverse clutch. There we go. Sometimes you need to take a note where the end actually is spaced. On this one it doesn't really matter, but sometimes that's in a specific spot for a reason. You can see those clutches are worn, but they're not burnt out as well. We'll check this drum out. That's the one that we pulled out before the low and reverse. Same show. Worn, but not burnt out. We're up to the centre support now. Good idea to take these tubes out first. Now to get the centre support out, you'll find that there's a really strong circlip there that you need to actually tighten. They're an outer circlip. You need to get it out. So we've got this tool that we made a while back, but you can buy a special tool. They are very strong, so just be warned, they do come out very difficult. If you're trying to lever it out with a screwdriver, you probably risk doing damage to the case. There we go. You can see the circlip moving now. We just take it out now. There we go. Got it out. It fell off, but we've got it out. Now when you get this circlip out, you'll notice that it's tapered. You want to have the flat edge towards the centre support. You can see that, it's flat there, and this side's tapered. So the tapered part goes out towards the pump. The tubes, you'll notice the two middle ones are the shortest, longer, longest. And that's because of the curve in the centre support. And that drum should just slide out. And the rear planetary is quite a heavy unit. And we've got the output shaft. And that's basically it. It's all out. Now we've got the centre support. Good idea to just check, make sure where the clutches run in here. You can see those little wear marks that they haven't chewed right in. Diaphragm spring returns the piston where the rings run. On the other side we've got a diaphragm spring as well. Make sure that isn't cracked or damaged. Now we've got the planetary assembly, the rear one, the big one. Sprag clutch. You can see if you hold, just come off like that, it'll spin anti-clockwise and lock clockwise. Then we've got this Torrington bearing that sits on the front side of the sun gear. The way you remember all this, you've got the sun gear, then you've got the planetary gears which go around the sun, and then there's also what's called an annulus gear which goes around the planetary gears. So that one you can't really muck up which way it goes. On that one there's also that little spacer there just to level it up. Don't lose that. Don't forget to put it back in. The sun gear, you'll notice this is the front sun gear, and then there's another one under here. You'll notice that it's got splines on one side, no splines on the other. And we've got another Torrington bearing or needle roller. Then we've got the rear sun gear. And you can see this one has a big taper on it. The taper goes towards the front. There's another Torrington bearing that sits on the other side of that sun gear. And there we go. Clutch plates. A few hard spots on there. I like it when they wear out and they don't burn out. When they burn out, it means you've got an internal pressure leak. When they wear out, it means it's had a good run. And the thicker one is the pressure plate. You can see these large planetary gears. You've got the front sun gear runs on these gears here, and the rear one runs on these bigger section of the teeth on the gears. And what happens, these thrust washers here flog out. There is meant to be a little bit of movement there, but so we just run around and just check all that. That one's a little bit worn. But not too bad. That's all fairly normal. And finally we've got the output shaft. As I mentioned earlier, there's the annulus gear. That one runs on the outside of the planetary. Good idea to just check these surfaces. That actually runs on an internal bearing. That one's in the case. And you've also got a Torrington bearing there. Another one that sits in here. And there's also a bush inside there. You can see that bearing in there, in the case, right in there. And the seal is the seal that goes between the transfer case and the transmission. Anyway, that's basically it. Now we're just going to run through and recondition it, put a seal kit through it. It looks like it won't really need any steel clutches, but definitely all the friction clutch plates, bushings, Torrington bearings, clutch plates, and probably a set of solenoids. These solenoids on the valve body, they've got a number between 1 and 5 on each of the solenoids. You want to make sure that you've got the right one. They're actually a flow rate number. Some workshops, what they do, because the numbers go from 1 to 5, they install a number 3. That way, if number 3 is sort of a midpoint, even if the settings are number 1, number 3 is closer to 1 than what number 5 would. So if that makes sense. So if you had like a number 5 there and you put a number 3, you're only two readings away from number 3. So it's not going to create too much of a shift issue. But ideally you want to go through and just put the same ones back in. If you change the mechatronic plate on the valve body, you will find that there's a solenoid strategy number or code number on here, and you'll need to actually take the whole transmission with the vehicle to a dealership to get it flashed, to link it up with the valve body. They put the sticker on the outside here, but there'll be a tag or a label on the valve body itself. This just tells the details of it there. If you don't have a proper or suitable scan tool that can flash the mechatronic unit with the computer, it's always best to take it to a dealership and they'll do that for you. If you keep your original mechatronic unit and just replace the solenoids, you won't need to flash it. It's only if you change this unit here. I hope that helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Throw me a beer if any of this information has helped you out in any way. Much appreciated. Keeps us motivated. Any comments or questions, leave them in the section below the video. Thank you for watching.